I have now been working on my from-scratch operating system to replace Windows and Linux for more than 2 years. And from the very beginning, binary compatibility and API backwards compatibility have been a core design consideration. Because you don't want to be in a situation like Linux is today, where you can't run a binary built many years ago on a modern distro without having it break. As an Arch user, I notice this all the time. I update my I run an update on my Arch system, and then binaries will break left and right because they were linked against an incompatible version of glibc or whatever. The artificial breakage is everywhere. Now, I've been developing this window manager for my new operating system, and it was it's been a great opportunity to test out this ability to upgrade APIs. Because here we have, I'm running the editor program, but not any new editor I developed. The old editor program that Serenum users are already familiar with. This is the one that it was written for an entirely different way of operating, where it runs only in exclusive full screen. But here I can use it to modify this test file. And what I've done is I've implemented the same syscall API, because on Serenum we have syscalls that go into another process. And that's the fundamental API I'm talking about here. A little bit of a novel concept. I've added support for the same API string and the same API in the window manager. So the unmodified editor binary can run under the window manager. And here I get this thing where we have this window. This is a placeholder. Well, not a placeholder. It's a stand-in window. Because the way this works is I need to switch into this guy's exclusive full screen. So I hit Control-Alt-Enter. And now once it switches over the video mode, you guys who use Serenum will recognize the old editor. I can edit the file. I hit save, quit, and then we pop back out to the window manager environment. And now I can display this changed file. Not texture or temp, or was it temp file? Test file. There we go. You see the changes have been saved. Now what's so great about this is by implementing this easy API, I've now enabled myself to work on the window manager from within the window manager. Because when Serenum was launched a couple of months ago, we only had this boot shell here that could only run one program at a time. And I've actually been using this together with the editor to develop the window manager entirely within the operating system. So I haven't left Serenum while making the window manager. So if we go back into the window manager, the cool thing here is that in my second workspace, I have the window manager running inside the window manager because, of course, the API I added for backwards compatibility with what I did is I implemented the API that the boot shell uses. And given this backwards compatibility, I could run the editor binary, the old editor, completely unmodified in the new window manager. But I can also run the window manager in itself because, of course, that's the API it uses to go into exclusive full screen, take over the system. Now, this is obviously different from the new API we use for terminals. The terminal here is the only full program really that exists. But I have the new terminal that can do all kinds of interesting things. It obviously uses the new windowed API. And I have planned I need to write a new editor that runs in window mode. But for the time being, I can run the old editor inside the window manager, which means I will now be able to delete and remove the boot shell and have Serenum boot up directly into the new window manager. So I think that should be quite a convincing argument for the power here of the backwards compatibility. And we could actually look at the code, because people might find that interesting. So let me go out here and then back in here. It seems redundant to run two window managers inside of each other. So we'll close this. If we go into the window manager code, the way this, probably only advanced Serenum users will know about this, but the way you connect to, let's take a look at the shell first, the new shell. So the way you connect to one of these APIs, and I'm using the API as obviously a loose term, but in this case it means actually something concrete. On Serena, I talked about this previously. We have something called inter-process procedure calls. They're like syscalls, but you establish a connection, although it has nothing to do with networking, even though it sounds like it. You establish a connection to a parent process by an initial syscall, and then once you have that connection, you can do syscalls into the parent. And so the interface for this is, let's see, when we start up, so this is of course the shellcode. When we start up, I think somewhere further down here, yeah, we do this, find inter-process procedure call, and we provide this API string. And in this case, it wants to use the 1K window manager API v1. If you wanted to upgrade this API, say add new system calls or like change how things work, you could change this to v2, and then the window manager would support the old v1, so you can keep running the old programs, and support v2 for programs that want to use the new system. And then if you wanted to have a program that ran on both, you would first try to connect to v2. And then if that fails, you go, I failed to connect to something with v2. Let me try v1. Okay, so given this, after this is pretty straightforward. We get this alien handle, which is just, a handle for the other process. And then we use this. Here we do window manager get. This is named temp. It's less temporary now as I'm finishing things up. But this is actually a syscall where we could look at the assembly for this, which is somewhere further down. Let's see. This is really simple, because this is just saying, hey, I want to get a window, and the window here is returned as a handle to a memory allocation that we map. So we map the memory into both processes, both the window manager and the child process. Now, if we take a look at the code for the window manager instead, then we'll see that we actually advertise two of these APIs, and that's fundamentally how this works. We can support two things. So when we start up, of course, the window manager itself right now is connecting to I think this happens further down. It connects to the, no, where are we? Yeah, here no, this is the register, and then do we do the graphics? Oh, here we're actually using this noob setup. Interesting. So for all those who've been complaining about the noob functions somehow being derogatory, well, I use them myself, so it can't be that bad. Anyway, we register here, we register the first API or first entry point, and then we register the second entry point. This Serenum 2e API v1 is a bad name, but it's the name I picked back in November when I was crunching for the conference. I guess it would have been October. But we register both of these, and we give them, so we have some stack space and an entry point. And so when the child connects, it connects, and then it does a syscall, or this inter-process procedure call. The registers are saved. Some of them don't get passed across, but most of the registers get passed across onto the thread that enters here, and then you use that you can pretend it's a normal call, although obviously you need to be a little bit hygienic for security purposes. Yeah, so what's interesting about this also is that, at least for my personal productivity sake and some of the Serenum users, is a very early request, feature request for Serenum was, hey, could we have different tabs in the boot shell? And I put this off because it would have been a lot of work and I would have thrown out the boot shell soon enough anyway. Well, now is the time we're throwing that out. And the reason for this is that we now support being able to open multiple files. So if I'm working on the, say, the window manager, I can open that here, but I can also open, it's a little bit clumsy, if we're going to be honest, but I could also open, let's actually put it in here. I can also open the other file, or let's say I want to look at some documentation. Well, I can also go into the documentation here, and let's say I want to look at the documentation for the Prime editor, which I'm using. Well, I can open that a second time and then say, let me go in here. Here we have one editor screen, and then I can go back out. Right now, when I hit Control-Alt-Delete, I'm being taken. Control-Alt-Delete as an escape pulls you to the highest so-called user port, right? The user port is the technical term for basically the context that gives you access to keyboard input and all the monitors and stuff. When I remove the boot shell and make the window manager the default, the PID 0, then you'll be going directly to the window manager. But say I go back here into the window manager, and then instead of, you can see I was focusing this main window. If I go to this window and now hit Control-Alt-Enter on this guy, well, we'll go to the other editor. So we actually can have several editors open, although, well, actually this is equivalent to or better than what would have been implemented in the boot shell. That's for sure. So you can keep your editor session alive. This will in the future something similar, although I'll probably update the API for that. There'll be a new API. If you were making a video game such as Data Donkey 3, which one day will probably be made. If you were running this game, Data Donkey 3, then it too would want to run in an exclusive full screen mode, because that's what you want for the most speed out of the machine. Because then we're not doing compositing. In fact, then the game renders, and then what the game renders is immediately streamed out to the display with no intermediaries, which is very useful if you're trying to make a video game. And this machine is very weak, as people know. So that'll be useful for that. Probably I've been thinking a little bit about the Serenum Web. I was talking to Philip about how to do dynamic programs. Of course, many of you know that the plan for the new Serenum Web I want to build is that it's going to be mostly static pages. Because we want a static web, but for some things you do want a dynamic web. But the cool thing is, on Serenum you can just run programs in a sandbox way where they can't take over your system. So a Serenum web application is just a Serenum program that gets downloaded to your system and then run inside of your dynamic browser program. And then I think the plan is to put this dynamic browser program, have that be one of these exclusive full screen programs. Long term, you would want to not do this, but I think for short term, that's probably what will need to be done in order to have a close to native experience with these dynamic pages. What more? Of course, this, what you see here in front of you with the both a new terminal with scroll back and stuff, which is new. This was also a requested feature. We have scroll back now. That's Control S for scroll back. If you, to all those who own a Serenum, they will receive this obviously with the next release, which I want to do at the end of this month. That'll include the window manager as default. I'm finished now with the new shell. We have both the scroll back, we have history that is persistent across restarts of the shell. So if I close this and open it again, you can see here we have history. That's very good. So the new shell, the window manager as default, the boot shell will be ejected and forever forgotten in this next release. There will be no new editor yet, because making an editor is takes a lot of work, and so that would delay the release if I had to do that. So we're going to be using the old editor running under the window manager as a stopgap solution for some time. We'll see. The big thing here is that I really need to start prioritizing implementing the internet connectivity for Serenum. So for the rest of this month, before I do the release, I'm going to be in the kernel doing bug fixes, performance improvements. There's a series of wins I want to get before the release, but that shouldn't take so long. Then we will, of course, have release 6. We'll go out to the people. And, you know, I look forward to seeing people write graphical programs that run in the window manager. I want to myself make a graphical version control system. I started a little bit on implementing some of that, at least the version control basics. And then once release 6 is out, my main focus will be on internet connectivity. Because I think that's going to just level up the system a whole deal. Then we can both, I can start doing collaborative work on Serenum with other people, all using Serenum, connecting to a server. We can start implementing the new solution for email, messaging. We can have a chat, a message board. I get to start playing around with cryptography and packaging some of the quantum resistant cryptography libraries for use in Brevis. All this fun stuff. But the cornerstone, so much of this interesting activity hangs upon the fulcrum, if you will, of this is that Wi-Fi support. And so that'll be my main mission once release 6 is out. I will try to keep up the YouTube videos, although I think there will be less progress videos and more a style of there'll be something. Maybe I'll have small projects on the side so I don't go insane, and I might make videos about those. But I expect doing this Wi-Fi stuff is going to be me going into the cave for some time and then emerging at the end with something working. Anyway, until the next video, I wish you all a very good evening and good day.